Hey, this is Tim, bringing you words of grace from downtown Manhattan. I'm actually at the graveyard in Trinity Church down here, and I brought you here because I'm among some gravestones of people who lived during the time of Jonathan Edwards. A few hundred years ago, Jonathan Edwards actually pastored very close to here. The section of folks that wanted him to be their pastor were from First Presbyterian Church, which was at Broadway and Wall Street at some point in history. It is no longer. But anyway, so he pastored near here. He's known for many things, one of which is his resolutions, and he wrote many of them during this time as a teenager in New York City. Well, how your resolutions are doing for the new year, right? January is come and about gone. You're 3 weeks into it. How many have fallen beside the wayside and are thrown away for next year? Well, I want to give you some focus on that. And one of the texts we could go to, I think would be Moses' encouragement prayer, really, in Psalm 90, when he said, Lord, teach us to number our days, that we may present to you hearts of wisdom. Lord, teach us to number our days, that we may present to you hearts of wisdom. Moses definitely lived that way, and we could learn from him. It's encouraging to know that we can learn. Teach us to number our days. But that day numbering is helpful, and that's what the new year brings. Even the new day. It's a new, fresh new day. Lord, help me to use this day to your glory. But may each of those days be numbered so that at the end of our life we present all of them to him, having been lived in wisdom, hearts of wisdom. It's kind of like writing a novel, a lifelong novel, and each day is a page that you're writing, and you're praying that the Lord would glorify himself through your life. Lord, teach us to number our days. The end of your life is that presentation. You're presenting the novel to him and saying, Lord, here it is. I present it to you. I pray that it was lived in wisdom. Edwards definitely had that. Jonathan Edwards was foremost theologian, definitely, of the U.S. To date, probably, and one of the greater thinkers of the U.S., definitely in the 18th century. A preacher known for preaching sinners in the hands of an angry God. One of the voices the Lord used greatly in the Great Awakening, which really shaped American history in those time periods. Right behind me, Alexander Hamilton is buried. 20 years before he was born, Edwards was preaching in the Great Awakening, and the Lord was saving tens of thousands of people all over New England. Shaped history. 20 years before that, as this teenager is 18-year-old, moves to New York City. Now didn't have millions of people, but 10,000 people. It was still a big, bustling city at that point, at that time, and he's from a small towns, right? You can imagine the effect it had on him. But what's really neat is, as you read his biography, his diaries, his months here, his 8 months here, were packed with not references to city life and the boats and the action and the busyness and the people from all over. It's filled with the glory of God, with his passion to love God and to serve God with his life. He had just been recently converted. He had been at Yale for a year, and this group, this kind of conservative faction from the First Presbyterian Church here that had left that church, wanted him to pastor. So he's here for 8 months. But during the time, not much has survived from his preaching, except for these resolutions. And we find in there a person so filled with the glory of God and passion to live for God that this city, which is, kind of cool, is nothing in comparison. He's resolving things like to lose weight. No, those types of things aren't appearing. He's single. Nothing about a wife. Nothing about health, wealth, but all about a passion for God. Right? Things like resolve to live with all my might while I do live. The first ones, especially about the glory of God. Never to do any manner of thing, whether in soul or body, less or more, but what tends to the glory of God. Resolve never to lose one moment of time, but to improve it in the most profitable way I possibly can. And it goes on and on here. I'll put a few more up on the screen for you. So my thought to you is, in your resolutions, how many of them have to do with you and bettering you, and how many of them have to do with God? Are you resolved, purposing to honor God with your life, that at the end you would be presenting to Him that heart of wisdom? Or is it just for Tim, just living for stuff, living for you, right? That would be a very empty way to live. One closing challenge along these lines would be to ask you how many of your resolutions have to do with abiding in Christ. This would be the primary factor in all the fruit bearing of your life. In living to the glory of God, it starts with that fresh, regular, everyday abiding in Christ, remaining in Him. Jesus said, "Abide in me." Right? The branch cannot bear fruit if it's disconnected from the vine. Right? And apart from Him, you can do nothing. So look at your resolutions, look at your resolves. If you haven't made any, make some. But resolve to abide. Quantify time of abiding. There's a spirit of dependence and abiding you need throughout the day, but quantify time of abiding in Christ today, day by day in 2018, so at the end of the year, you'll be able to say, at least this year I'm presenting to the Lord a heart of wisdom.